Well, welcome everyone to day 2 of our international symposium focused on cooperative identity and energizing the cooperative brand. So if you were here yesterday, this is a quick refresh for you. We're coming to you here from the International Center for Co-op Management on the East Coast of Canada, and happy to bring together the whole world for this. I think we had over 20 countries represented yesterday in the folks who attended. We have 11 countries represented in the folks who are speaking, and it's just fantastic to see. I'm Erin Hancock. I'm the Education Manager with the International Center for Cooperative Management in the Business School at St. Mary's University. So I should make sure that we are good for translation. You will see the information in the chat into 4 languages. I'll pause to make sure people can access that if needed. Great. I invite you to update your Zoom name as it appears so folks know what organization and country you're coming from if you'd like. And also feel free to use the chat along the way to drop in your reactions to anything, your comments, certainly your questions for the speakers. And if you have things that relate to what's happening in the event that are happening in your work, links to events, publications, examples in the news, anything like that, let's keep the chat active throughout the day. And please feel free to use it as a space for connecting with others too. You also will have the ability to connect directly. If you click on the chat button, you'll see everybody who's here in the session. Both myself and Tammy have ICCM at the beginning of our name, International Center for Co-op Management. If you need any help with the program or what's coming up or how things are working, please directly message us and we can answer those questions. We will drop the program into the chat here shortly so that you can refer to what's happening today and tomorrow. If you'd like, there is a transcript option at the bottom of your screen if you prefer to see things written as well. We're going to use the same Zoom link the whole week, so please come and go as you wish. I would love to say a big thank you to our co-organizers and sponsors, Co-op and the Northwest Center for Cooperative Development, who have made this event possible, and also to Co-ops and Mutuals Canada, who are providing the support with the technology. And so you'll see someone here named Wordly Help, and that's the person from Co-ops and Mutuals Canada who can help you with translation. So please direct message them if you would. That's Jenny, if you would like help with translation. I also want to say a huge thank you to all of the speakers, 42 folks from across the world, as well as all of you who are making time in your busy schedules to be here and elevate this conversation. Yesterday, completely was on fire with joy and excitement and challenging conversations and lots of insights and examples, everything from the micro to the macro. And I look forward to continuing that today. We'll have Tom Ivey, who will be speaking shortly, giving us a bit of a roundup of what happened yesterday. I also want to share my gratitude to be living and working on these lands. We're in Mi'kma'ki territory. We're in what is called Chibuktuk, the Great Harbor, also known as Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And we're grateful to the elders past and present for their stewardship of these lands and these waters. I did also just want to share who the center is. And again, I'll drop this into the chat. I won't go into too much detail, but we've been around since 2003 offering education on cooperative management and governance to elevate the sector globally across all different aspects of the cooperative world. And we're very pleased to continue to do that work and to grow and expand every year. And I did want to give a special shout out that we're still enrolling for our online part-time certificate, graduate diploma, and master's in co-op and credit management for this year. And we have bursaries available as well. So if that's of interest to you, please send me an email. You've all received emails from me. Give you a sense of the breadth of this. Very excited about these numbers. I've already mentioned the speakers, 25 workshops and presentations over 4 days. We started last week with the pre-symposium workshop, and today makes this our third of 4th day. And with 400 people registered, people are coming and going throughout the day. These are our themes. So you will see these themes. I mean, I just want to, there are 15 people waiting room. Okay, I got them now. Tammy's on it. Okay, great. Okay, great. We've got these themes are threaded throughout the presentations that are happening throughout. So it's not necessarily structured like this, but rather these themes, some of them multiple are happening at any given time. So assessing authenticity, labels and certifications, effective branding, cooperative identity, positioning and messaging, marketing the cooperative advantage, communicating cooperative identity and building cooperative culture. And this one's also looking internally. We did that yesterday. And resonating in the contemporary digital landscape, which your session this morning very much gets at. In terms of the goals, you'll see these unpacked in the program as well as on the website. So I won't go into too much detail on this here, but just to say we want to bring people together. We want to be able to get the cooperative message out there, both at the individual organizational level, as well as what our reputation is as a whole movement and what it means to put our identity into practice in a way that builds trust and recognition from the wider world and potentially new members and new partners as well. So this is what we've done so far. And I want to pass it over to Tom now to give a bit of a recap on some of the themes that came out of yesterday.
Thanks very much, Erin. Yeah, wow, what a fantastic day it was yesterday. I think we just started off with incredible amount of energy, and we kept that going all the way through. And I finished the day just fizzing my brain with all of the ideas and thoughts and news that was coming out of the various participants and contributors. So it was great. And so yesterday we had a number of different sections. Firstly, we had a panel, and from that we heard that the amazing work being done by cooperatives in helping people ride out tough economic times. A key theme from each of the panelists was that members and the welfare of members was an overriding preoccupation of the cooperatives, which really made them a key ally for tough economic times. Co-ops have been navigating this complexity and embracing it with regular feedback and communication with those whom they serve. And this means that they're better placed to ride out the storm. And data and storytelling are key with this as well to the cooperative way of working and using it to enact real change for the betterment of everyone in their communities was a fantastic theme that came from that session. We then saw 4 great presentations. We heard about incredible rebranding consultation being done by CMC in Canada, very exciting things coming there. We heard about interesting local identity and public awareness programs in Colorado. Somos Co-op's amazing data-driven work, bringing in a cohesive branding identity, which had awe-inspiring levels of adoption, frankly. I was amazed by their impact, and a thought-provoking presentation from Jason as well on recognizing the immense cultural and mythological heart of cooperative identity, making that the core of our message, very motivating. And we then had 3 more great presentations and an interview panel. We heard about the data-driven plus framework for practical tools, great best practices and examples from Trillium Cooperative. We were introduced to the fascinating sort of cooperative management model in Argentina. And last but no means least, the inspiring case study from Big Duck Cooperative and its management tools. So some of the key themes that came out were just the visibility of co-ops is still a challenge. And despite that, we're still a massive part of the cooperative economy. But storytelling is critical. Stories matter, and using them to enact change is really important. And lastly, the fact that cooperatives are grounded in their local communities and their members and stakeholders, this creates the culture that can be used to create action. So just a small overview. Doesn't even tell a quarter of the story, but I'm really excited to see what the next 2 days bring us.
Thank you for that, Tom. So amazing to be able to capture everything that happened, the amount of joy, and I think we went through about 6,000 words in the chat yesterday of everyone
Wow.
sharing. So I did want to just mention what's coming up today and tomorrow, and then we'll pass it over to get into our workshop for today. So we're starting with a panel that focuses on digital storytelling. After that, we're still in those weeds of the kinds of questions that we've all had around the actual implementation of strategy and what kind of tools we have at our disposal and how we uniquely use them as cooperative enterprises. Then we'll get into an extra special keynote from Jeroen Douglas, who is the Director General of the International Cooperative Alliance, our international apex organization, followed by a panel. And this is about looking at a co-branding strategy globally for cooperatives, similar to fair trade. Later today, we'll have sustainability reporting as part of telling the unique cooperative story. We've got 3 presentations there. And then tomorrow is the final day. And so here you'll see that we'll do a focus on credit unions and marketing, and then talking about engaging new audiences and cooperatives. We'll do a showcase of worldmap.coop. And then the final portion of the day is that we'll focus in on marketing for member engagement and loyalty, and then have our closing. So that's what's coming up today. I'd like to hand it back to Tom to introduce the panel this morning.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you. And hello, everybody. Welcome to our first session of the day. This is one I've been looking forward to for a very long time. We are very excited to have a lively and dynamic discussion today. So please do put questions and comments in the chat area. We'll be moderating those. We'll have a chat section later. So we're going to start the panel today with a little bit from each of our distinguished panelists, and then we'll be opening it up to a wider discussion. So the theme for today's discussion is digital storytelling and strengthening cooperative identity in today's digital landscape. So this panel is bringing together cooperative practitioners from the Philippines, working in communications, marketing, and enterprise development, drawing from Youth Connect Cooperative's work with young professionals and gig economy workers, and global storytelling initiatives with ICA and my own organization, DotCoop. So panelists are here to share their practical experiences on their digital storytelling and marketing and cooperative advantage. I'm very excited about this. This is especially poignant for me because I've been involved with the collaborations of some of these panelists for some time. Several of us met for the first time at the International Cooperative Alliance's Global Youth Forum in 2020. It's been great to see them grow and create and develop since then. And we've been working together around stories.coop, around worldmap.coop, and YCC's work supporting the cooperative data gathering network in the Philippines. They've been working with us to map information campaigns and engagement efforts. And now, because of the work that they've done, the Philippines has over 20,000 entries on the world map. And the panelists today, I'd like to introduce each one of them. They're going to give us really unique and insightful experiences in the context of the Philippine cooperative world. We have Jay-vee Pangan, Chairperson of Youth Connect Cooperative, journalist and consultant for the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance. We've worked together for some years, and if you've seen the World Map logo or the identity.coop and stories.coop websites, then you've absolutely seen his work in action. We also have Teepee, co-founder, CEO, and creative director of the Red Roots Artist Cooperative. And Red Root Artist Cooperative is the first artists cooperative in the Philippines, with 18 years of experience in creative industries and cooperative cultural work. We also have Vina Rempillo, Training and Enterprise Development Lead at NATCCO. NATCCO represents one of the largest cooperative networks in the Philippines, composed of 1,078 member cooperatives and serving a whopping 7.6 million members and managing more than half of the Philippine cooperative sector's estimated assets. And lastly, but definitely no means least, we have Gile Cabuhat, Sales and Marketing Head of One CISP. One CISP is the first duly licensed insurance cooperative operating nationwide in the country. So we have some fantastic experience here today. So I'd like to kick things off to start with, to hear from each of our panelists with the question, are cooperatives still relevant to today's online generation? And I'd like to pass it over to Teepee to start the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right. Hello, everyone. Are cooperatives still relevant? In a digital landscape shaped by platforms, algorithms, and fragmented attention, how do cooperatives remain visible, relatable, and participatory to younger generations? So I want to start our time together with a quick temperature check. If you have your reaction buttons handy, give me a thumbs up. If you ever felt completely exhausted just from looking at your phone too much today or recently, or drop a sweat emoji in the chat if you have ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of content you consume in a single day. Okay, I can't see here.
There are lots coming in.
Oh, there. I see a lot of feeling that exactly. So we are living in an era of digital saturation. So today, we want to pose a question that might sound a little provocative. Are cooperatives still relevant to today's online generation? Cooperatives are built on deep rooted traditional values: solidarity, physical community, shared struggles. But today's generation finds community through screens, algorithms, and fleeting trends. Over the next few minutes, we're going to look at how we consume content, how the digital landscape has shifted, and how we can adapt without losing our soul in the process. To understand where we are, we have to remember how we got here. As a millennial myself, my relationship with media has been a bit of a roller coaster. I actually remember the analog days. I consumed content through the radio, the texture of broadsheet newspapers, comic books, and scheduled television programs. Then come high school, and with it, the beautiful screeching sound of dial up internet. Suddenly, we had analog phones, and eventually in college, social media arrived. It was a complete paradigm shift. Let's use the chat box really quickly. What was your very first social media platform or internet obsession? Was it Friendster, MySpace, Tumblr, or maybe early Facebook? Please type it in. Where is it? Okay. Exactly. Um, Back then, uh, digital spaces were just a small extension of our physical lives. Today, it's often the other way around. Our physical lives are heavily dictated by our digital presence. JV, you'll be talking about cooperative identity later, and I think this is a huge hurdle for us. We are transitioning from a time where co-op's identity was built on handshakes and local meetings to a time where co-op's identity is judged by its digital footprint and online branding in mere seconds. The challenge is real. This constant evolution eventually led to a massive friction in my own life. I spend my days in the highly structured digital first worlds of cooperative leadership and creative direction. It requires a lot of strategy, screen time, and polish. But beneath that, there is a primal human urge to simply create. Recently, I returned to the physical canvas along 18 fellow artists for an exhibition called Playground. When you hear the word playground, you might think of childhood innocence. But my canvas became a reflection of modern playground we navigate today. It is a chaotic, overstimulated space. It explores the intersection of memory and digital culture. Returning to paint wasn't a retreat into silence to escape the digital world. It was a way to process it. The canvas became a site of mixture without purity, a messy, honest capture of how we survive and thrive amidst the absolute noise of our daily feeds. And this brings me to a specific piece from the exhibit titled Artist Imitates AI. We are living in a post-internet playground where our creative processes are deeply entangled with the digital debris around us. Honestly, this painting was born out of profound brain fog. I was experiencing the intense overstimulation of trying to translate all the chaotic images in my head onto the canvas, and I was just paralyzed by the noise. So I did an experiment. I fed my feelings, the colors I was imagining, and the lines I wanted into an AI image generator. The machine gave me a composition, and then I, as the human artist, imitated the machine. I reinterpreted that synthetic output through my own human brushstrokes, reclaiming the narrative and making it my own. So, Jelly, you're going to dive deep into AI tools next. I think this painting is a playful but unsettling reversal of roles. We are constantly asking where human intuition ends and algorithmic performance begins. For me, the AI was a tool to break the paralysis, but the physical act of painting was necessary to restore the humanity to the image. What can put the genie back in the bottle? Digital behavior will continue to evolve. And as organizations, we are now entering a totally new phase. We have these in- incredibly powerful and sometimes overwhelming new tools at our disposal. My painting was just one small example of trying to navigate that. I used the machine to break through the noise, but I made sure to reclaim my narrative through human brushstrokes. But as cooperatives, our canvas isn't a gallery wall, it's the communities we serve. So, as we look at all these new technologies and try to figure out where human intuition ends and algorithmic performance begins, it leaves us with one massive question for our movement. As we undergo this digital transition, how do we adapt without using our authenticity, losing our authenticity? I'd actually love your take on that. Do you feel like AI makes it harder for organizations to stay authentic, or does it just change the way we express it?
Hi, Tips. Allow me to answer that with another question. But before that, I would like to um, praise your output, your art. I really loved the details and the colors that you use and the story behind it. And before I dive in, I would like to ask something to our audience. You may use the chat box for this question. Please answer this and think of this really carefully. When was the last time you saw a photo or a piece of content online and you weren't sure if it was real? Like that moment of, wait, is this AI? Have you experienced that? Just before this, exactly. And that's what we're going to explore together today. So to kick things off, oh, I'll just share it again. Okay, we will have to play a little game, and I call it I Spy. I know you're all familiar with this children game, I Spy with my little eye. And as you can see on the left, you'll see yay, which means yes, AI made it. And on the right side, you'll see nay or no, AI did not make it. So I'll be sharing some images to you. I want you to type it in the chat box if your answer is yay or nay. Okay, are you ready? Okay, let's start with our first image. Is this yay or nay? The first image, please take a good look. It is a beautiful Filipino family, the grandparents with the grandkids sitting together in what looks like a cozy home. Warm light, everyone smiling, someone's holding what looks like an insurance document. Okay, may I see your answers? A lot of you are saying yay and some are nay. The correct answer is this one is yay. This one is an AI generated photo. I asked an AI tool to generate an image of a Filipino family valuing insurance. And honestly, it did a pretty impressive job, right? The rattan furniture, as you can see, the bamboo style walls, the warm tones, it captured the feeling of a Filipino home. But here's the thing, and this is what I want you to hold on to. It is a feeling, not a memory, not a real family, not a real story. Okay, let's now proceed with our second photo. Is this yay or nay? Look, it's so cute. It is a cat, a very fluffy, very serious looking cat staring directly into your soul. I can see a lot are saying nay. And you got it correct. It is Nay because that is my cat, 100% real. And I took that photo myself. And here's my point. Cuteness cannot be fake. That expression, that particular fluffiness, that tiny judgment in those eyes, no AI trained on the internet could replicate exactly that moment between me and my cat. That's mine and that's authentic. Okay, let's proceed with the next photo. Oh, this one is tricky. This one looks like a really nice space, a modern, beautifully designed room with a mustard yellow sofa and clean, minimal interiors. Yay or nay? Oh, really tricky. Some are saying nay, some are saying nay, but the correct answer is nay. This was one of the most affordable and beautiful Airbnbs I stayed in during my recent trip to Malaysia. A real place, a real experience, a real memory. Am I good at taking photos now? An AI could generate something like that because that's why I'm saying it's tricky. But it couldn't give you the feeling of walking into that room for the first time, setting down your bag after a long walk and thinking, wow, I made a great choice. And that story belongs to me. Okay, let's now proceed with the next photo. This one is a slick building, modern facade, glass panels striking blue accents. Some are saying yay. A lot of you are saying yay. Okay. And unfortunately, the correct answer is nay. This was designed and rendered by our architect. This is the head office of my cooperative, the one cooperative insurance system of the Philippines. Using the architect used his own skills, his own tools, his own vision. A human being poured creative energy into this. Yeah. Now here's an interesting one. Because AI tools can generate architectural renders that look almost identical to this, but the difference is the intent, the craft, and the accountability behind it. An architect signs their name to their work. We know that. They studied it, they took an exam, they stand behind every design decision, and AI doesn't. Okay, for our last photo, is it yay or nay? This one is a happy family photo. A young couple with two adorable kids, all wearing matching blue shirts. Is it yay or nay? Do you still have the energy and your eyes for looking at which one is AI and not? Okay, we still have a lot of active participants here. We can see a lot of yay. And I think my Filipino friends will really say nay because this one is a trick question and it's both. This is what I call hybrid. This is the family of my niece, real people, real love, real photo. But I used an AI tool to change the color of their shirts because originally they're all wearing black. And, you know, in insurance, black is something like, oh, morbid. And I thought blue would look nicer for this presentation. But the story, it's real. The people, it's real. The moment, it's real. And just the shirt color was that was me using AI as a little helper. And I think that's exactly the sweet spot. So what does the game tell us? Look at these two side by side. This one is, these are the photos posted in our official Facebook page, the Youth Connect Service Cooperative. You can also hit like, follow, segue. Okay, so you can see two photos. The first one, the left photo that was posted during the International Youth Day. Our artist through our chairperson created this one. The AI generated art, and as you can see, it is perfect, precise, cute, and it was only produced in seconds. While the other one, On the right side, it was posted during the International Women's Day. These are actual photos of all the women members of the Youth Connect Cooperative. It is born from experience, shaped by community, and felt in the soul. And that's the heart of what I want to share with you today. Both deserves respect, but only one carries a story that no algorithm was trained on. And again, AI is impressive, but it has never felt anything. Look at these two videos. The right side is an AI-generated jeepney scene versus a real video of a jeepney on a Philippine street. The AI version is colorful, cinematic, almost like a Pixar movie. Beautiful, really. But the real jeepney, the real scenario in the Philippines, it has a driver who's been navigating the same route for 20 years. It has passengers sharing a bench with strangers, passing the fare forward, trusting each other. It smells like the increasing prices of diesel. You know that feeling? It sounds like a horn in traffic and music from a phone. Again, AI is impressive, but it has never felt anything. And as cooperatives, our identity, our whole brand is built on what people feel, the solidarity, the belonging, the shared purpose, and no AI can replicate that because we can use AI just to amplify it. Okay, I will no longer deep dive into the details about different tools in our storytelling toolkit, although you can take a screenshot or I believe Erin will be also sharing the copy of the presentations. These are just the different AIs that we can use now. We have transitioned from the traditional as what TP presented or shared earlier, and then we move on to the chat AI, to generative AI, but now we are into agentic AI. And I know some of you have been using the different AIs now, different AI tools. Let's say, for example, for writing and copywriting, we have used ChatGPT. Actually, ChatGPT reached 100 million users in just 2 months, and they are the fastest tech adoption ever. And now we have the Claude, which is much improved compared to ChatGPT now because Claude is considered now as agentic AI, meaning you can already ask that application or AI to do task for you. And we have the Gemini, which is more on the generating images, more on the generative AI side, and a lot more AI that you can explore. Just use AI again to ask on how to use these different AIs. Okay. And now, the question now is the biggest question of all. Can AI be considered an artist? Yes or no? Someone are also sharing the different AI. You may also share. No, a lot are saying no. And that is also my answer. My answer is not yet, and maybe not ever in the way that matters to us, because AI only creates from instructions. AI lacks emotions that creates art. It only produces outputs based on patterns it has learned, but artists, our cooperative storytellers like Teepee, create from emotion, meaning, and the desire to express something true about their community. The difference isn't just technical, it's deeply human. AI can help us really produce it faster, distribute it wider, and make it look more polished. But the story has to start with us. And the biggest question of all, can AI replace cooperative work? What is your answer? Yay or nay? Can AI really replace our cooperative work? No, never. And I say that with confidence because AI can automate tasks. It can assist us in decision making. It can improve efficiency. We use it and it genuinely helps us, but it cannot replace the human heart of cooperatives. It cannot sit in a general assembly and feel the weight of a vote. You did the approve, the decline. It cannot mentor a young member through their first leadership role. It cannot build the trust between a credit union and a farmer who has never had a bank account before. Reality. AI may automate processes, but it cannot replace people-powered purpose. What we need to prepare for is not a world where AI replaces us, but a world where the cooperatives that learn to use AI well will be able to serve their members better, reach more people, and tell their stories louder. And that's an exciting future, right? And now I'd like to close this with a question. What does a cooperative storytelling actually look like in practice today? Maybe my co-panelists can answer that one.
Yes, Jenny, thank you for the question. Uh, it's really hard to navigate these days, like when you're producing content. But now that we know that we have a lot of tools in our shed, which ones do we use actually ethically, responsibly, sustainably? Because it can quickly turn into a cluttered nightmare, and we don't actually know which ones are good for us. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. I got this idea from Kathy Stats from one of the webinars that I attended. So if you're familiar with this literary piece, are you familiar with this? It's called The Six Blind Men and the Elephant by John Godfrey Sachs. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So each of the blind man was asked to touch or describe an elephant, and one said, like, "Oh, it feels like a tail." One said, it feels like a wall," and one of them said that it feels like a tree trunk, and one of them said that it looks like a fan or it feels like a fan, and one of them said that it's so sharp. How can it be like a fan? It's sharp and long. And then the last person said, "Oh, it's long and it's moving like a snake." Uh, are they all correct? Are they wrong? They're all correct each and every way. But sometimes this is us cooperatives. When you ask a person what a cooperative is, we would give like different definitions, like, oh, it's a credit, it's something in the credit field. Oh, it's like my grocery store. It's where I get my money. It's where I get my loan. In the Philippine context, we have different understanding or definitions of cooperatives, and they are all correct. But how do we consolidate? How do we make sure that these narratives actually point to one direction? And this is where digital storytelling comes in. But it's not just posting content on different social media platforms, but intentionally and strategically building trust, visibility, allowing the community to participate in the content production as well, and in the making sense and making meaning of the content. But not everyone enters the digital ecosystem equally. There is a digital divide. We always say that, yeah, let's go to where the people are, but where are actually the people? Not all of them are on social media. In the Philippine setting, a lot of cooperatives don't have websites or Facebook pages or LinkedIn pages. And many communities and cooperatives are still offline, underconnected, or only beginning their digital transition. Now, how do we ensure that digital transformation remains inclusive, participatory, and grounded in real community relationships? This is when we talk about communication, it often becomes too formal or institutional, and most of the time the communications department does this job, and without realizing that it's everyone's job. And now AI content overload makes authenticity more important, just like what Jelly and Teepee said. Now we're going to share some examples of how we make sense of this, how we navigate through the digital space while also taking into account the digital divide, and while taking in and using our talent as youth cooperators who are, what do we call ourselves? Digital natives. And let's take a look at this Co-ops Day. So for Co-ops Day 2021 to 2023, um, people usually celebrate with a poster. They post with this poster. And like, okay, participatory, it's okay, but how do we shift this? How do we personalize this? How do we allow cooperators to tell their own stories via this poster? And this is when we thought of cooperative vision boards. If you've seen this material, this came from YCC, so we made pre-prepared cooperative vision boards. I know, vision boards are supposed to be personalized, but we know that some cooperators want to just print something and then show for a photo. So we made cooperators select from a myriad of options of like what messaging would resonate with them. And then we put them in a Trello kit so they can just easily download and use those. And then the shift, that small change of putting blank cooperative vision boards, because there are actually the blanks. And if you can see here, there are boards that cooperators actually filled in. So that small design shift made cooperators actually participate and join a simple, well, it's not a simple celebration, but a celebration that's supposed to be just happening yearly. And oh, and I'd like to share cooperative world map. Like we work with Tom here, our process of creating the logo and eventually telling the story. So now we have the cooperative world map, from designing the logo to coming up with the digital assets. How do we make sure that the story is shared in the digital space, but informed by grassroots realities or the realities in the communities? And then we translated that vision and that objective into different kinds of materials. You see here we have several videos and reels, and this newly produced reel as well, and some posters. And then when we designed, for example, the social media cards or the brand identity for the conference in Delhi, we we were thinking, okay, this is a conference, but how do we humanize a conference? It happens every year, happens every now and then, but how do we make sure that the brand identity reflects uh human or the realities on the ground? And YCC also produced the social media cards for International Year of Cooperatives. So if you've seen this material, we also did this. And ICA was like, how do we share statistics and numbers without boring our audience? So we produced these social media cards. And then of course the secret is in the caption as well of how we make sense of these posters. But these are just like some of the examples that we produced. And then we also did a campaign called the Social Media Takeover Campaign, where, okay, we want to make it participatory. How do we make it participatory? Then let's get user generated content. So we ask cooperators to send videos to take over our social media, send their content, and then we will feature them on our social media channels. And we did get a lot of like interest and cooperators signing up. And eventually we had five, I think, cooperators from all over the world who share stories on our different social media channels. And of course, this is also tied to stories.coop, which we actually worked on as well. How do we mix, how do we revitalize a website from 2012 that was created for the International Year of Cooperatives in 2012? And then how do we do that in 2025 again during the International Year of Cooperatives? So we look back at those stories, we rehash them, we look at them, and we looked for fresher ways to share those stories again. And at the same time, ask cooperators to submit stories. Now, I'm curious if uh, do you guys have a story on stories.coop? I wonder. Or have you visited worldmap.coop? I'm just curious, just to pass the ball to you. Have you seen these websites? Yes. Some of you are saying that you did. And then another conference that we produced content for was the NCBA Cruise, the conference. And they asked me, Jay-vee, how can we make it more engaging for our young cooperators? And I said, like, we have to produce reels, and we have to do interviews with cooperators. We have to do on the ground videos showing behind the scenes, people arriving, and also like let's check the trend and let's follow the trend. Let's think of creative ways of covering this conference. And this is what we did exactly in 2024. And we also work with NRECA, and this is about rural electrification. And it's more about how do we make people in the community understand what we're doing. At the same time, how do we make sponsors and other organizations and institutions understand what we're doing in the communities? And this is what we produced for them. But the challenge now is not only telling individual cooperative stories, because we have really great individual stories, but finding ways for those stories to collectively strengthen our shared cooperative identity. And instead of, for example, saying like a cooperative cafe saying support local, maybe you can post actual morning rituals of baristas opening the space or members preparing the food and conversations happening inside the cafe. And this, instead of saying we help farmers, maybe you could say you could show videos documenting harvest mornings, pricing frustrations, weather anxieties, and the real lives of producers. Maybe instead of saying cooperatives are democratic, maybe show how cooperatives are actually democratic by documenting participation in practice, like voting, assemblies, consultations. Or if you're celebrating your anniversary, maybe it could focus less on the ceremonial aspects, but more on intergenerational storytelling. For example, founders reacting to old photos, members sharing memories, or younger cooperators interpreting the movement in today's context. So there are many, many, many ideas and so little budget. But this is the reality in many institutions, but there are also affordable and creative ways to navigate around these challenges. And now I have a question for you. What can cooperatives, leaders, members, and young digital creators collectively do? What can we do to strengthen our shared cooperative identity in today's digital landscape?
Well, Jay-vee, well, thank you very much for that question. That's a very wonderful question. With the first three topics with the earlier discussions, I think one thing became very clear to everybody that the digital landscape is continuously changing. We talked about how people consume content differently today. It's faster, it's more visual, more interactive, and more influenced by algorithms, maybe, and digital culture. Then we saw how AI and digital tools are transforming storytelling. Content creation is becoming easier and faster. But at the same time, people are also becoming more critical about authenticity and trust. And cooperatives are already telling us many meaningful stories online and building stronger connections with their communities. So now this is the bigger question, and this is a will be maybe our one of our last question. What can we do? What can we do to strengthen our cooperative identity, our identity? What can cooperative leaders, members, the youth leaders, digital creators collectively do to strengthen our shared cooperative identity in today's digital landscape? Because today, cooperatives are not only competing for attention online. We are also trying to build trust, show our relevance. We wanted to build our credibility and connect in a very, what we can say, a very crowded digital environment. And actually, this conversation is not only happening here in the Philippines, even globally. The cooperative movement is reflecting on this question of what we say identity. The International Cooperative Alliance, through its hashtag cooperative identity initiative, has been encouraging a lot of cooperatives around the world to revisit and deepen the understanding of cooperative identity in today's fast changing world. And I think this is very important because when many of our cooperative principles and definitions were formalized decades ago, including the internationally accepted definition of cooperative and the statement on the cooperative identity, the world looked very different from what we are experiencing right now. The social realities were different. Technology was different. The economy was different. Communication was different. There was no social media, Facebook, YouTube, or whatever. No AI, no digital communities, no so-called influencers and digital creators. And yet today, cooperatives are operating in a world shaped by digital platforms with fast changing trends, unfortunately with misinformation as well, algorithm driven behavior, and the increasingly individualistic online culture. So I think the challenge now is not about changing cooperative values, because our principles, the cooperative principles, will always remain timeless. The challenge is, how do we make our cooperative identity visible, understandable, and relevant within today's realities? How do we translate cooperative values into today's language, platform, and the digital behaviors without losing our essence? Because if cooperative identity stays trapped only in documents, in manuals, or formal discussions, younger generations may struggle to connect with it emotionally and culturally. And this is exactly why conversations like this are important, because it reminds us that cooperative identity is not something static. It is something that must continuously be understood, practiced, communicated, and lived across generations. So we wanted to share a very simple approach on how we can collectively strengthen our shared identity in this digital age. So first, it's very important that we shape our common narrative, our common cooperative narrative. Well, not necessarily one script or one communication style, but we want a shared understanding of what cooperatives stand for today. Because if we do not intentionally define our identity, the digital space will define it for us. And and I think this is a very relevant today, because many young people, they first encounter organizations online before they encounter them in real life. So when people see cooperatives online, what do they consistently see? Do they see cooperation? Do they see community participation? Do they feel empowered? Or do they simply see another organization trying to market itself? The ICA reminds us that cooperative identity is rooted in shared values like democracy. If you guys are familiar with the cooperative values, solidarity, equality, honesty, openness. What's the other one? I cannot forget about that. Concern for others. I cannot forget about that. That's very important. And I think our digital presence should reflect those values clearly and consistently. Next, it's very important that we humanize our digital storytelling, especially in today's digital environment. Authenticity matters more than perfection. People connect more with stories that feel real. They wanted to see real members, they wanted to join real communities, they wanted to feel real struggles and real impact. AI and digital tools can help us communicate faster and better. But we should always remember that technology should strengthen human connection and not replace it. Because at the heart of cooperatives are still people. And I think this is where cooperative storytelling becomes different from ordinary marketing. We are not only promoting products or services, we are telling stories of participation, of shared ownership, and community transformation, right? So the third one is to activate participation. Activate participation. A shared cooperative identity cannot be built by communication teams alone. It requires participation from everybody, from everyone, from to the top management, to the leaders, to the members of the cooperative, up to the employees, the young people, content creators, the partner cooperatives as well, because cooperative identity becomes stronger when people actively participate in telling and living the cooperative story, not only during campaigns or celebrations, but in every digital interactions that we do. The cooperative identity becomes more powerful when people feel ownership of it. The fourth one is to reinforce collaboration. And this is deeply connected to one of the cooperative principles, which is cooperation among cooperatives. Sometimes online, sometimes online cooperatives still operate in silos. We promote individually, we create content individually, we advocate individually, but imagine the impact if cooperatives intentionally amplified one another online. Like we have a shared campaigns, we have shared advocacies, we have shared stories of impact, because every time cooperatives visibly collaborate in digital spaces, we strengthen not only individual organizations, but the identity of the cooperative movement as a whole. So even initiatives like the cooperative mark and the .coop domain, they were created to help cooperatives build a recognizable shared identity online. The cooperative mark, if you're familiar with the COOP, it serves as a global symbol that helps people immediately recognize organizations that operate based on cooperative values and principles. And at the same time, the .coop domain was also introduced as a dedicated digital space exclusively for cooperatives. So it helps distinguish genuine cooperatives online and reinforces the idea that cooperatives are part of something bigger than individual organizations. They are part of a global movement with a shared principles and shared purpose. And these initiatives are important because they showed that cooperative identity is not only about internal governance, not only about organizational structure anymore. It is also about visibility, recognition, and relevance in the digital spaces. So, like here in the Philippines, for example, um, we at National Confederation of Cooperatives, there's already a strong push toward integration and collaboration among member cooperatives. Right now, we have around almost a 1,200 member cooperatives in the Philippines. So we want to push for that integration, not only operationally, but also in terms of shared identity, of shared services, and collective growth. Through integration initiatives, member cooperatives are encouraged to work together, support one another, and strengthen the broader cooperative ecosystem instead of operating in isolation. And I think this is also very relevant to our discussion today because integration is not only about systems or programs, it is also about storytelling and identity. How do we create a digital environment where people do not only recognize individual cooperatives, but also recognize the larger cooperative movement behind them? Because every time cooperatives collaborate, amplify one another, and communicate shared values consistently, we strengthen not only individual brands, but the cooperative identity as a whole, right? And finally, this will be the last approach that we wanted to share with everybody. We need to empower the next generation to become co-creators of cooperative identity. Young people are not only future members, they are already shaping conversations, they are leading the trends, the culture, especially communities online today. So this is why youth-led spaces like us, for example, the Youth Connect Cooperative, are very important because we help translate cooperative values into modern digital culture in ways that are relatable and relevant to younger audiences. And I think one of the biggest opportunities today is not simply asking, how do we attract young people into cooperatives? Maybe the better question is, how do we build the cooperative movement together with them? Because a shared cooperative identity becomes stronger when young people are not just consumers of content, but they are active creators, they are active collaborators, they are advocates of the movement itself. So, well, at the end of the day, strengthening our shared cooperative identity is not about making all cooperatives look the same. It's about creating our shared visibility, our values, the trust of the people, and for us to communicate what is our purpose. Because what we are trying to say here, a stronger cooperative identity, is built when cooperatives communicate not only who they are individually, but also who they are collectively. And in many ways, the digital space is now one of the biggest, actually not one of the biggest, but it's already the biggest place where cooperative identity is being shaped and remember. So if we want the next generation to understand cooperation, if we want them to believe in cooperatives and participate in the movement, then I guess we cannot leave cooperative identity invisible online. And well, thank you very much everybody for listening to the four of us. I hope this conversation continues even beyond today's session. But if you have any question, please put it in our chat box. For now, I'll turn it back over to our moderator. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was an enlightening and really wonderful journey through the ways that each of your organizations are addressing this issue that we have. And we've got some time now for some questions to have a little bit of a chat among us. I've seen the chat has been extremely busy. There's been a lot of people commenting and bringing forth their thoughts, which is fantastic. Some of the key themes that I think that really came out of this discussion that spoke to me was one, it seemed very apparent that humans are very much at the center of cooperatives, and that is our strength and that is our answer, even in the digital space. And I think in the comments we showed an interesting dichotomy between the use of AI in its usage and applicability to helping us be more productive, but also the ethical cost and the questions that we have. Another key theme I thought that came through was that there's a demand here for more shared campaigns and content, which I think is really encouraging for us all to use. This was matched in the comments with some of the things that people were saying, a desire to see more collaborative spaces and opportunities for us to engage with each other and different organizations so we can coordinate and show unity. So some really good food for thought and some great examples. So thank you all for such a stimulating presentation. So we have just over 10 minutes left in the session. So I would like to open the chat up to any questions anybody has on the main topic of the discussion or any individual questions you might have for each one of our participants. I will start the questions off while we wait for people to put their answers or questions in the chat. With a question aimed at all of you is what is next really in the Philippines when it comes to the message of the Philippine cooperative ecosystem? I know I've been working with YCC to develop a richer, connected picture of the Philippine data. But when it comes to your own organizations and the picture of the Philippine economy, how are your organizations collaborating with the picture of the Philippine cooperative economy? And I'd like to open that up to all of you as a question. Maybe perhaps we start with Jay-vee because
perhaps I could start. Jenny and I hosted a session called Master the Boardroom, and it's a session for board of directors from I think all over the Philippines, right, Jenny? And from there we got to hear some secrets, not secrets, but some ideas of like where the leaders of the cooperative movement in the Philippines are heading. And I heard talks about just one example of, replicating the World Cooperative Monitor, for example, like have that exist in the Philippines because Belgium already did it. They have the Belgian Cooperative Monitor. And we have such great stories, such great numbers in the Philippines, but not consolidated enough, like the World Cooperative Monitor that we can access, that anyone can access and understand and just see a picture of it in like a nutshell. So that's like one of the things I think that the leaders are pursuing. I don't know how serious. I don't know when, and I don't know what the time frame is. But we had a casual conversation as well with the Cooperative Development Authority in the Philippines, and this is the branch of government assigned to regulate, manage, inspire, help cooperatives in the Philippines. They're also looking into, for example, empowering lab cooperatives. This is the cooperatives for children or people below 18 years old, as well as coming up with effective and efficient succession plans for youth leaders who are in youth committees and different cooperatives all over the Philippines. So many different like actions here and there, but we could talk perhaps about what's happening in the youth sector. Maybe Vina, I can pass the ball to Vina as she's coming from NATCCO.
Well, thank you, Jay-vee. I think one important direction for cooperatives in the Philippines today really is digitalization. So here in NATCCO, in National Confederation of Cooperatives, there's already a strong push through its digitalization roadmap to help cooperatives become more connected and adaptive and responsive in this, changing needs of our members, especially when it comes to digital behaviors. But what's important is that digitalization should not only focus on systems and technology, it should also strengthen collaboration and participation, education, and the cooperative identity itself. Because the goal is not simply for cooperatives to become digital, but for cooperatives to remain relevant and connected, especially people centered in this digital age.
Just to
Fantastic.
add,
Thank you.
if I may
Yeah,
add,
please do.
Dom.
Yes,
Yeah, because
please go ahead.
this question is really close to my heart because it's literally why Youth Connect exists. And aside from that, I'm also working in the International Cooperative Alliance Asia Pacific for a committee on youth cooperation as the current vice chairperson. And what we did in the Philippines is we've been working to make sure that youth aren't just the future of cooperatives, that we are the present, that we've been pushing for giving the youth a real voice, not just a seat at the table, but actual participation, not just in governance, but as also in decision making and yes, in ownership. Because when young members have skin in the game, when we contribute our own share capital, when we sit on committees, when our ideas are actually shape direction, we don't just join the cooperative, we help protect it. And here's where it connects to everything we've been talking about today: AI, digital storytelling, authenticity. We, the young people, are often the ones who know these tools best. So, because we grew up with them, we're not afraid of them, but we also grew up with the values of the cooperative movement. And we want to use those tools in a way that honors and emphasize the role of youth and how we can help in decision making along with the those in the spending are those pioneers or founding members of board of directors in the different cooperatives. So I am part of the author that drafted the memorandum circular, and I hope that it could be passed anytime soon in our Philippine with our Cooperative Development Authority. Thank you.
From where we sit at Red Root, what is next for the Philippines is using art, design, and digital storytelling to make the cooperative model absolutely irresistible to the next generation. So we are right in the middle of a massive generational handover. So as for how we are collaborating, we see the broader Philippine movement as a shared canvas. So at Red Root, we know we cannot just stay in our own creative bubble. So we are intentionally breaking down silos and providing the creative firepower for our partners on this panel, like YCC, NATCCO, One CISP, um, and we bring the digital storytelling and tech, and they bring the youth networks, the data, and the scale. we are pulling our strengths so that together we aren't just surviving this digital transition, we are actively painting its future.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. So we are coming towards the end of our session, and I'm going to need to leave a little space at the end for the handover. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your insights and your comments today. And I would also like to invite the panelists to put any links that they have to the current work that they're doing, to any of the joint sort of participatory events and other things that you would like people to follow, to look at. If people are interested on finding out more, then please do put that in the chat so people can follow that and catch up with the other things that we're doing. And we have that captured at the end of the session. I didn't see any other last questions coming in. So I think now I'll be able to hand back over to Erin. And thank you very much for everybody's kind attention to the session.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you to all of our panelists. I think that was a perfect way to start the day, I guess, end the day for you folks in the Philippines. But for the rest of us, I mean, this has been very energizing. I think we're threading some of these important conversations and questions and ethical conundrums too, and seeing what things look like in implementation. So thank you to all of you. And we'll be, of course, sharing recordings and sharing slides and whatnot after the fact, probably up by next week on our website. For now, I'd love for folks to take a moment. I've dropped the chat to the evaluation, the link rather to the evaluation into the chat. And so we do appreciate your feedback. It helps us to know what you all want to see in future events as well, and helps us give our kudos and our flowers to those who have put their efforts and skills into this. So like the panelists here today. So we do have a 15-minute break coming up leading into our next session. So just to highlight what is coming up, we've got two skill building sessions. One focuses on building a branding kit for your cooperative, and the following is about the state of social media and enhancing your cooperative's digital strategy. So very much building in these themes. So that's coming up in 15 minutes. We'll stay on the line here if anyone has any questions, but then we'll be moving folks into the waiting room so we can do our tech check with our next folks. So see you all again in 15 minutes, and there'll be a following session after that later today. Do check out the schedule. We'll drop that again into the chat. Thanks, everyone. Okay, everyone. Wonderful. Welcome back. This is the 2026 International Symposium on Cooperative Identity and Energizing the Cooperative Brand. We started last week with a pre-symposium workshop. We had a full day yesterday. We've got the session coming up now, and then another session later today. And then we have 3 more segments coming tomorrow. So lots to do. Please come and go as you wish. And we'll be posting video and slides by next week as well, so folks can take this in and refresh things that they saw throughout. I wanted to say a big thank you to .coop and the Northwest Center for Cooperative Development for being co-organizers and sponsors of this event, as well as Co-ops and Mutuals Canada, who are our supporters with technology as well for translation. Just to make sure folks have that information, in the chat, you'll see the information on translation into 4 languages. Please go ahead and click on that. It's voice to text. Also, we have the ability to use the transcript option on Zoom as well. That's enabled for you. Please use this as a shared space throughout. Do add things to the chat if you have links or you want to connect with people directly. Please use the chat for that. For questions for the speakers, go ahead and drop that into the chat, or we can wait until question period at the end of the segment where you can raise your hand and voice your comments or questions as well. We'll be using the same link for the whole week, so do come back whenever you'd like. And I'll drop the program into the chat so you can see that, as well as seeing the themes of the conference, the goals, and so forth. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to our moderator today, who is Rebecca Harvey, who's the executive editor of Cooperative News.
Thanks so much, Erin, and hello and welcome, everybody. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this next session of the Cooperative Identity and Branding Symposium. So firstly, a huge well done and thank you to the organisers and all the participants so far. It's been an absolutely amazing event so far, and what a fantastic resource it is for our cooperative movement. As Erin said, my name is Rebecca Harvey, and I'll be moderating this session. So day to day, I'm the executive editor of Co-op News, which is a magazine and a news website about and for the global cooperative movement. And you can find us online at thenews.coop. So we tell stories of cooperation, and using social media is part of our storytelling process, as is our own visual identity. And day to day, we also deal with cooperatives of so many different shapes and sizes around the world in so many different sectors who are doing the same thing. So I'm absolutely delighted to be introducing the next two presentations, which address this in particular. So first of all, we'll have a presentation on Cooperative Branding 101 by Camilla Tapia and Ellie Yanagasawa from Transverse Cooperative, which is an artist-owned worker co-op in Baltimore, Maryland, that serves movements for collective liberation with art, design, and cultural strategy. And then following that, we'll hear about the state of social media and the next steps to update your cooperative's digital strategy from Dawn Walker of Co-Social Community Cooperative, which is a member-owned organisation in Canada, which has the purpose of providing democratically run and open social media. So I can't wait to hear both of these presentations. So I'll let the speakers introduce themselves a little bit more further, and hopefully we will have some time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions in the meantime, do put them in the chat and we'll keep an eye on them. But meanwhile, Camilla and Ellie, it's over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's just give Ellie a second to share our slides.
Here we go.
Okay, I'm Camila Tapia. I use they, them pronouns.
And I'm Ellie Nagasawa. I also use they, them pronouns.
And we're here from Transverse Cooperative, and we're going to be presenting about how to create a branding kit for your co-op or update your branding kit. Next slide. So what is branding? Brand is the creation of an identity and the use of a symbol that uniquely marks a company, product, or service. Brands allow consumers to relate to and understand a company. Under an industrial capitalist framework, designers fill in the gap between workers and consumers, refocusing from exploited labor in a company to a fictionalized persona that is the company. In a co-op, the focus of branding can shift back to the people behind a company as members reclaim their relationship to what they produce, purchase, and or own, and to one another. So the relationship between the consumers and the workers. For example, in a worker co-op, the focus of branding can shift back to the labor behind a company as workers reclaim what they produce. Another example is in a consumer co-op, where the focus moves from what the company dishes out for consumers to buy to consumers dictating how to spend their hard-earned money. We can move on. So what is a brand kit? A brand kit, otherwise known as a branding style guide, is a reference, collection, and guideline of a brand's visual representation and personality. So a style guide includes instructions for how and in what context to use a brand's logos, color palettes, imagery, typography, voice, and more to be consistent in sharing the brand's voice and messaging across all platforms. So creating a recognizable identity for your co-op will help it to stand out from competition and stick with customers. It also allows for staff to save time by having quick and easy references for communications and marketing. And so we have some examples of brand kits that you can be inspired by that we're sharing in the chat, namely from Dropbox and NatGeo. These are really, professional. These folks have millions of dollars to spend on marketing. And so, your brand kit can look anywhere from that to just being a simple slideshow that includes all of this information that we're going to review today. And so, yeah, these are just inspirations. Can move on. So we have some framing questions for you as you're creating a branding kit. So first is important to understand how you would describe your co-op's current brand. So is it, maybe inconsistent, or is it already used consistently across all platforms? Like, are you using the same typography, the same fonts, the same color palettes? Is there consistency in how you're using your logo? Do you have a logo? What does the logo look like? Are there different versions of the logo? And how does it currently reach customers? How do people relate to the brand currently? So any descriptions that you can have of it. Number 2 is, what are the values of the business? So that is helpful to know, to be grounded in to create the brand, because we're going to be talking about voice and personality behind the brand. And for that, you need to be grounded in your values and get clear on that. We can move on. So then, now that you know, where are you coming from, where are you going, is important to think about in terms of framing your branding. So what needs to change about the current branding that you have, or even about the lack of branding that you might have with your co-op? What do you want to improve? Why? What isn't working and why? So really investigating that first before you even start working on your rebrand is important. And then lastly, where do you envision your co-op to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Beyond that amount of time, you can always do another rebrand later, but trying to think about, in the next several years, where's your co-op going, and creating a brand that fits that company, not something more aspirational or where you were in the past. You can keep going. So to really dig into these questions and start to think about your branding, the real purpose behind a brand is to reach your customers. So a lot of you might already have an evolved sense of your target audience for business planning purposes. But if you don't, it's important to get a good sense of this for creating a brand, because it's ultimately about creating that relationship between you and your audience. So the voice and personality that you create needs to speak to your customers. The color palette you choose needs to draw them in. The imagery and typography behind the logo should fit in their lives as easily as your goods and services should, and identifies with your customer where it matters. So some questions to prompt you here are, who's your co-op's current audience? And who is the wider audience that you're trying to reach with this rebrand? And it might be that you're trying to reach the same audience. You're not trying to expand your audience, but you're trying to reach them in new ways. So what are those new ways that you're trying to reach them? It's really helpful to make customer profiles. So little profiles of the archetypes of the customers that you're trying to reach with the product that you're imagining them buying. So it might be that you have 3 different products that you offer, and they're all going to be marketed towards different customer segments. So you would want to make different customer profiles for all of those different groups. The customer profiles would include things like age, race, gender, class, jobs, communities, locations, their interests, their values, and where they encounter your co-op. And all of this is helpful for grounding in what sort of voice do you want your brand to have to speak to those customer segments, and how do you want to create your brand, again, to be in relationship to those customer segments. Next. So this is just an example of an activity we like to do with our clients. We used ourselves as an example here. And so this is a set of spectrums of where your voice / personality of your brand is going to land. And this is, different group to group, obviously. So we organize these spectrums as being more establishment, proper, practical on the left-hand side of the slide. And on the right-hand side, it's more so like anti-establishment, open-minded, fun. But these spectrums can be organized in any way, including with the ends of the spectrums not being like direct opposites. And the point of this is as a conversation piece for you and your team. So it's not about, even establishing that you are one thing and you're totally not another thing, but it's about being able to say with your team, like, why do we think of ourselves this way? And how do we want our audience to relate to us in this way? So for ourselves, as an example, I'll talk about the professional versus whimsical and how it relates to our branding. So on the one hand, and you can see for professional versus whimsical, we put ourselves dead in the center. And that's because we see ourselves as both. So on the one hand, we take ourselves seriously as business owners and present ourselves and our work with clarity and cleanliness. This includes having contracts, proposals, project timelines, and agendas for every project, and communicating with clients clearly and effectively. People might have this idea of artists being disorganized, and so it's key that we show that we can be trusted with our clients' work and making it accessible to their audiences through our art and design. So we try to balance this professionalism with our very whimsical nature. Our art and design is all about creating a vision for optimistic futures of the worlds that we want to build. So we bring a lot of care into how we work with each other and our clients, and we do this work because it's what we love. So our website, as an example of how this branding comes out into our work, our website is full of color. It has our custom fonts. It has a lot of fun shapes and, of course, our art from our portfolio of working with clients. But it's also clear, concise, and easy to navigate, just like working with us. Okay, next.
Hi, now I'll be presenting the second half of our presentation. So now we'll kind of go into the nitty-gritty building blocks of like building a brand. And first, we can start with color theory. So if a defined voice and personality sets the tone of your brand, color sets the mood. There's like tons of studies around the psychology of color and how it affects us non-verbally. And they say that like different colors elicit various feelings and can influence behaviors. And it's often the first impression you make, like in an increasingly rapid world where you have 3 seconds of someone's attention. Color is the first way to transmit a message or feeling without saying anything. So you'll see here, these are very generic, but like the red, for example, can kind of like love, blood, fire, energy, intensity, and from your audience, it could elicit like feelings of passion and excitement. As one, obviously, there's all the colors have different connotations. Blue can connote sea, trust, stability. You'll find a lot of like large institutions that want trust, like banks, use the color blue. And also maybe you want to stand out from your competition. So for example, if you're in the agricultural industry, all of your competitors will usually use a color green, which is associated with nature, with growth, with harmony. So in this situation, maybe using another color would help you stand out in a grocery aisle, for example. So this slide here is just ways to talk about and organize colors on your brand palette, because you aren't just choosing one red color. You want to have accompanying colors that will enhance the main color in your palette. You're wanting to figure out the hue, the saturation, the harmony. And these terms here are really just to help create a shared language between your co-op members or with your designer as you're choosing your brand colors. So you're all like coming from the same place and able to communicate your ideas around like the color of your brand. I keep saying next slide and I'm controlling the slides. So now we're going to talk about imagery in logos. So, logos can be categorized into 3 big buckets. You have logos that mainly use symbols and icons, and they rely on typography, logos that rely on typography, or you have a combination logo that has both typography and imagery. And this is probably the most common ones you see. We're going to focus on the imagery of logos now, and then I'll talk about typography later. But yeah, on this slide, you'll see a collection of image forward logos. And while we're looking at these logos, notice what the symbol or the icon is. How is it stylized? Why did they choose these certain imageries? Why was it rendered in this certain way? How does the icon or imagery encapsulate and represent the company? And what story are they trying to tell you in this teeny tiny little image? The style in which you depict the symbol or icon you choose depends on who your entity is. So this is where you can reference the voice spectrum and pull from your values to really decide on a symbol that will represent you. So as a quick example, I'll talk about Solidarity Works, which is a logo that Transverse Cooperative did, and it's a combination imagery and typography logo. It's rendered in a realistic style. It was influenced by the city seal of Chicago. And our client Solidarity Works is a co-op consultant. And so we wanted to use, common imagery used in the co-op movement. So like Twin Pines, for example, but render it in a more realistic way. So that'll be balanced with this, very typical architecture you'll see in Chicago, this house, 2 hands shaking a rose. So that's one example of an image forward logo. And then another key part of your logo brand is typography. So, these several fonts, again, typography is like a whole class that you could take in college, but this is 2 minutes that I have. And so typography can be kind of categorized into these 6 types. You have a serif font, which has flourishes. It feels classic. It's timeless. It's traditional. A lot of institutions and nonprofit organizations that want to seem long-standing use this. You have sans serif typefaces where it removes the flourishes. It's sleek and modern. A lot of tech companies use sans serif fonts. You have a handwritten one, which feels much more friendly. It feels organic and human. And then you have a script font, which is even fancier handwriting, and it feels luxurious. It feels expensive. Think weddings. And then you have a display font, which is bold, it's big, and it's used to grab attention in headers, but might not necessarily be appropriate for like a body text. And then a monotype font derives from the typewriter. So the letters are all uniform and it feels precise, it feels clear. And so oops, sorry about that. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, 1 second, some technical difficulties.
It's all right. Take your time. Not a problem. You've got about 5 minutes left. Okay, Ellie?
Okay, perfect. That is all I need.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So, yes, as an example
Ellie,
of,
you can
yes.
see your notes right now, not the slides.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Take
It's
your time.
okay. You're among friends here. It's all good.
Here we go. Are we good now?
Yeah.
Excellent. So as some examples of some typographic logos that we love, and you'll notice that we've been trying to pull logos from the cooperative movement or yes. So we would love to highlight Mayor Zoran's typography. It's iconic. You'll see this like big bold display font and also handwritten font that's very reminiscent and pays homage to New York City bodegas and like really respects working class New Yorkers. The color here is like this bright bluish purple and a yellow and orange, which like it differentiates from the traditional color palette of establishment politicians. So Zoran's really trying to signal like, I'm different from those guys. And then you'll see, I also want to highlight the cooperative mark, which is the, it's this mark right here. It has, it's blue, which connotes trust. It has this like fun repeating circular shape. The two O's make this nice infinity sign to show like the sustainability and the reciprocity of the cooperative movement. And, this was created so that the international cooperative movement can have like a common visual motif. So that's some typographic logo examples. There's so many more that we could go into, but we don't have that much time. So that's the end of the presentation. And with this was a mini version of our cooperative branding training that we offer as a service. The full training is very interactive. It includes a lot of fun exercises to explore all these concepts within the context of your co-op. And we hope our presentation got your creative juices flowing, that you feel inspired to reflect on who your co-op is, what your values are, how you want to uniquely present yourself via imagery, typography, color, and voice, and to be perceived by those you serve. And if you're curious about us, we don't just do branding logos. We do a lot of things. And we're experts at breaking down wonky cooperative solidarity economy concepts into accessible language, and accompany that with beautiful art. So we make zines, graphic novels, illustrations. We do murals. We do custom merch. So take a look at our website for more info. And we also love to talk shop and connect with worker co-ops. So don't hesitate to reach out. And that's it.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you so much. And Camilla as well. Absolutely brilliant presentation. I've got so many questions, but I'm going to try and hold back and just limit it to one for now, because I know at the end, Ellie, you showed like the co-op mark. And so one of my questions was, how can co-ops integrate other brands and other ideas into their own toolkit? So for example, at Co-op News, we use the co-op mark within our own main logo. But how can other co-ops introduce that into their voice?
Oh, is that a question right now?
It's a question right now.
Oh,
just a super quick one.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question because it's like obviously the co-op mark is pretty unique and iconic, and it's like that's a great question of like, how do you balance this very round shape with like whatever you want to do? So I don't know. I feel like in our situation, I think like you'd want to have that design, like the co-op mark right there in front of you while you're building this, figuring out these questions. And then, maybe it's like you try and figure out a way to integrate the typography more by choosing a rounder one. But then also you want to make sure that you like stand out from other co-ops. So everyone's not like have like these like bubbly round fonts all together. So I'll have to think about that a little more, but that's a really interesting question. Or it could kind of be like you render the co-op, this is just off the top of my head, but you render the co-op mark a little bit differently so it looks more like a stamp. So you don't necessarily like incorporate it into the logo itself, but you have it as like a stamp that you can put somewhere on your website, or kind of like a union bug that unions use, So
I like it. Brilliant. I love the idea of turning wonky concepts into accessible things too. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you. Right, we've got about 34 minutes left. So Dawn, Co-Social, tell us more.
Okay, I think it takes a while for my slides to arrive. So I've started sharing them. I'm gonna wait to see if, can you see them? Or I still see black on my side.
It's just loading still, this end.
Okay, great. While they're loading, hi, good morning for me. I'm Dawn. I'll be talking about social media and digital trends, some opportunities that I see for cooperatives in there. And then as the subtitle is, some next steps to update your strategy. Oh, maybe I should stop and try resharing.
Yeah, try that. That's a good idea.
Okay, sorry, one more time. Okay, I see them now, so I think you see them too. We're good?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So why am I here? I'm from CoSocial. We are a nonprofit community service cooperative incorporated in BC. As Rebecca said, our purpose is to provide open social media for Canada. We have a range of dues, and we are open to both individual and organizational members. We offer types of open social media services that I'm going to talk about a bit later, so I won't go into them now. So first, what are some of these social media and digital trends for 2026? I reviewed a range of reports that are both kind of for content producers and publishers, but then also a little more academic, and I'm just kind of consolidating them here. I have links to everything I've drawn on throughout the presentation. I'll share it after. I think there's sort of three top line ones that kind of kept recurring across what I saw. Number one, video is king. It's the best performing format on most platforms. There are very specific other types of formats that work well on other platforms, but video. So if that's not something on your radar, I think this is the year it should be. Another one is that people are increasingly using social search, which is just a term to refer to like actually searching on social media itself rather than like going to a search engine and performing only all of their searches there. The only like firm statistic I saw is that at least 2/3 are searching on one or more social networks or platforms. So that's where discovery or that maybe first seeing of your brand may happen if it happens through social media. And then next, there are signs of saturation on legacy social media, particularly about like engagement on specific posts. But there are some newer alternatives where that terrain looks more open, and I'll talk more about that below. So some more trends, but ones that I think are a little more focused for people who may be publishers or producing content. First is that, and this kept recurring, is that really differentiating and having an authentic voice and using like really human storytelling is sort of a key part of how you kind of are updating or maintaining your presence online. I think this is actually like a really lovely fit with like this conference and actually the kind of immediate preceding presentation from Ellie and Camilla, where there was that whole section on like, do you understand your brand's voice? The next is that new format. So this is just sort of calling back to video, really tend to have stickier engagement. This could be long form video, it could be short video, audio, augmented reality, though that seems quite niche to me, and or just being in lives and spaces. Related, this is something I'll unpack more in depth, so I'll just say it briefly here. There really is this kind of move from some people in digital marketing to move away from like a linear understanding of moving through an engagement funnel to something more like, here are the series of touch points that occur across platforms, and that's how people are interacting with us and our brand. Next, there is more engagement as like a like for like comparison that's happening on some open social media alternatives like Blue Sky and the Footerverse in comparison to X. And then finally, while there is that kind of more engagement happening on those alternatives, there is like very sector specific legacy social media that's driving key conversions. I think one of the most interesting examples for me, at least, is that if you operate a brick and mortar and like your offerings are anything in the food service, like you should be using or have a presence on Google Maps. Like that is one of the key things that's driving discovery and like food ordering. So that's not my sector. That was like new to me, but so interesting balance of like there is saturation, but actually in very specific sectors, being in those saturated places is really important still. Just taking a step back from digital trend or social media trends, I just want to talk broadly about, what I think some of the landscape is in Canada in this current digital moment, just to name things that we probably are all feeling or seeing. So I think there really is this ongoing enshittification of social media and big tech. I mean, that may mean that you're paying more for less. So there's sort of like a shrinkflation component. It may mean that the experience of just everyone on those platforms feels worse. And I think that's like a thing that we should be paying attention to and navigating, both in how we're using social media and like, what we think of as our digital strategy. Next, AI, of course. I'm not really talking about AI in this presentation, but just to name that, we've seen this rapid rollout from the tech sector. It seems like, especially in the Canadian context, policy conversations are playing catch up. I think there's clear evidence of social harms. People are also finding value in the tool. So I think we're in this moment where a lot of uncertainty and difficulty exists to navigate kind of like what's hype, what's real, like how should we be paying attention to it. Related to the talk too, I think questions of privacy and digital or data sovereignty are really kind of on people's minds again, and it's sort of in a national conversation. My observation is those conversations tend to be framed as infrastructure, and those don't really talk at the level of like what as organizations we're like considering. So there's a lot of gaps and challenges specific to enterprises that we need to like think through as we try to like safeguard the privacy of our members or our employees in some cases, and then think about like, okay, what moves do we make to protect our digital or data sovereignty? And then just interesting to me is just like kind of affirming that Canada really has a high level of digital literacy, in organizations, but that there are these signs of lagging digital adoption, especially in like day-to-day operational tasks. And this report that I linked to sort of talks through what some of those barriers and challenges are. A big one is capital investment. So that's kind of like trends and a bit of a landscape. I just want to pick out two pieces that I think are maybe interesting opportunities for cooperatives. So the first one is that authenticity and having like an authentic voice and really human storytelling. I guess my sense is the opportunity is, that authenticity that we have that's rooted in our cooperative values. I feel like this is what the whole conference is about, or the symposium. So I think that each of these sessions is probably demonstrating little ways to think about how to like bring and carry that authentic voice through across your presence, especially if you're using social media. Just some like questions to ask yourself when thinking from like a strategic perspective here, and hopefully this builds a bit again on trends versus presentation, is does your brand come off as genuine? Like, are you tapped into your audience, and do you know how they use social media? Do you know the spaces they're in? I think some ones that I thought were interesting for this year are, does your content have human imperfections, or does it look like it was generated 100% by AI? And then related to that, are you open and transparent about any AI use if you're using it? The next opportunity I want to talk about, and this is like a little bit more to unpack because I'm trying to cluster a few things together, is I think there's this opportunity to be exploring those alternatives as new touch points. So again, I think the opportunity here is to like, probably maybe still, if you're already using it, kind of think through that engagement funnel model, but kind of also expand your horizon, really see and try and understand what some of those touch points that operate across platforms are that you have. And with that lens of touch points, can you add in potentially engagement experimentation on open social media alternatives, seeing if there is more engagement and if your audience is there, while kind of still maintaining those sector specific channels that are going to be so important. So
can I jump in here, Dawn? Just 1 minute. So you're using a couple of words I think might be worth explaining a little bit. So Fediverse, for example, do you want to explain just a little bit about what that is for people who might not know?
I'm actually just about to. So the next slides are explaining everything that was just on this slide. But yes, thank you for that prompt. And maybe I should have queued that up. So just some questions to ask before I explain these concepts. I think you can ask yourself, like, are you aware of the journeys your customers take before making a decision to buy with you? Do you know, again, this sort of relates to, do you know where your audience is? Do you know what the key social media is for your sector? Are you kind of paying attention to some of these newer platforms or tools? And do you, or how do you coordinate across your social media and communications channels? So I'm going to talk a bit first about what this like engagement funnel, and then maybe what the cross-sector touchpoints looks like, and then I will talk about open social media. So first, this is sort of like a standard representation that I've seen. But it has like details in it that often those are abstracted. But if this is new to you, an engagement or marketing funnel is a way to map the path from when someone first discovers your brand to when they become a paying customer. There are a series of phases. I've seen either 3 or 4. It often moves from something like a first phase called awareness to something like consideration, then action. That would be where like a decision to buy or like procure a service happens. And then often there's like, if there is a 4th phase, another phase, which is retention. So like how do they keep staying as a customer? So this is, again, like what an engagement funnel is often presented as. The sort of alternative is, if you want to think about things through a lens of like touch points, is presented by Boston Consulting Group working with Google. So note that. But they kind of want to use influence maps as a replacement. So instead of like a linear path through a funnel, they really wanted to like show all of the different touch points that happen through different phases. That is, I think, like a subtle shift. I'm just going to walk through an example they have, which I think helps illustrate this. So again, focusing on video, one of those like kind of new or like drivers of engagement. They're talking about on the left, this example of how a video can be driving influence along that pathway. So first, like a customer may see an advertisement while scrolling on Instagram. It could be short there. Next, when they're kind of, that's that awareness phase. So they haven't heard of it before. They're seeing it while they're scrolling. Next, they're then looking for reviews, and this may be a mix of content you've already produced and put on as video, or some that other people have and they've posted. Then they're finding reviews and product comparison videos on YouTube. And then finally, they may be streaming, so watching more video, and then they're seeing like an interstitial ad. I think this model may not look like most people's experience of like ads and digital marketing, but this is sort of a way that they show how you can think through those phases. You can think through how social media supports those phases. So things are happening on YouTube, things are happening on Instagram, and then they're happening on a streaming platform. And they use what they call, and this is the part that I think is actually the most helpful, 4S behaviors to really understand how people are engaging through those multitude of touch points. And they could actually be in the use the same social media to engage multiple times. So the 4 S's are streaming, scrolling, searching, and shopping. Streaming is this sort of like, it's streaming content on video, but it could also be audio and podcasts. And it's really this like the sort of personalized media experience that a lot of people have these days. The next one is scrolling, and they call this discovery without intent. So this is just people's like being on those platforms and using them. The next is search. But again, kind of going back to that trend of social search, this might not mean search on like a search engine like Google. This might mean search while they're like already on a social media platform. And then finally, shopping, which they're focused here on what they call seamless transactions. And that could be a range of things. It could be like an ad to buy embedded in social media, but it also is like, I mean, I think as probably people see the sort of ubiquitous experience of like Shopify or like other shopping carts kind of already saving your information and moving through for a faster checkout. So again, they're just using these 3 kind of 4 behaviors as a way to think about kind of what people are doing across touch points, and those touch points include social media. And just quickly to kind of go back to the engagement funnel, I think the like awareness here and what's seen on this diagram is that like, you know, social media now could be a key part of every phase. So it could happen right at the beginning for awareness, when the person first hears about you. It could happen when they're actually doing comparisons and start to like look at their options, or maybe, you know, doing research. And then it could also be the instigator of action, like when they potentially make a decision to buy or procure services. So that's the kind of like engagement funnel, but also considering maybe more touch points. The next part, what are those open social media alternatives? So open social media is a term that really refers to interoperable networks that aren't owned or managed by a single tech company. And they operate more like an ecosystem. They tend to have different values than sort of like the big tech offerings that are more about being decentralized. So kind of many actors in the space. about, retaining individual control, in some cases, particularly over data, and preserving and protecting people's privacy. Often this software is open source and free to run, but then there's like all of the technical skills that are required to run it. And that's sort of like the work of our cooperative is like, okay, how do we take this free to run software, but like do all the technical work required to run it so you as an individual don't have to, and we can do it cooperatively together. I'm just going to talk a bit about two more, and these are the ones I mentioned, Mastodon in the Fediverse, and then Blue Sky in the atmosphere. So Mastodon and the Fediverse. Mastodon is the name of one piece of software. There's like so many words for all these. Fediverse is sort of like the name for the total network. And then to allow these things to interoperate, there's a protocol that's built as well. And the protocol or standard is called ActivityPub. So in this case, in this model, there are many servers. There are many different people running Mastodon. Which one you're on can impact what you see, but you still can access content across the Fediverse network. Roughly, there are, though it's a bit harder to count in these decentralized platforms versus like a central big tech social media platform, there are roughly 12 million users with 900,000 monthly active users. The kind of key experience of using Mastodon is that it looks functionally like a microblogging. So it's very similar to using X or Twitter. There are posts, they're called toots. But there are a range of other Fediverse apps. So there's ones that are for photo sharing. There's ones that are for video short sharing, etc. So there's a lot of different social interactions that can be experienced in the Fediverse. The other one is Blue Sky. And so Blue Sky is the name of, again, sort of like a single piece of software. It's also the name of a company, a Blue Sky public benefit company. The full network is called the Atmosphere, and then the protocol that powers it is called App Protocol. So in this case, it looks a little different. There's frequently more like one main server that people are joining. This would be Blue Sky's, though there are some now emerging community-run and cooperative-run alternatives. But once you have that first login with that one server, you actually use your same login to access many different social apps from the same account. It's a bigger network, so there's 40 million users with 12 million monthly active users. It has this growing app ecosystem. I think last list I saw was over 200, where you're kind of using that same login. Blue Sky, again, is also microblogging, so it's short, mostly text content that you can add images. It looks very similar to X. But they also have a couple quite popular video and image photo sharing apps. And they actually have, I think this is an opportunity that exists in the Atmosphere, is they have, for example, like a video streaming as well as Streamplace as like a very popular app. So how are some organizations experimenting and using these? Some are just leaving X and then like kind of switching over to these channels. I've had examples that you can review, but BC Campus is a local to me example, and then The Guardian as well as an example. So they just like one-to-one like slotted these in as a replacement for X in their social media strategy. There's others that do like group exits. This is more common in like the public or nonprofit sector. So some examples of that happened in Europe. And then finally, some of them are just like adding it as an additional channel. So they're kind of experimenting with it as well as sort of more traditional social media. And the Animation Co-op, which is also a local to me cooperative example, sort of is active on both the Fediverse and the Atmosphere. So they have two separate accounts there, but then they also maintain accounts on like, I think LinkedIn and I'm now going to blank, I think Instagram. And so just to go back to that trend that I found, what are they finding? Yeah, so there is an increase, this like early statistics, but there is an increase in the number, the amount of interactions on posts. I think you see that strengthen if you're on at least a smaller or medium-sized account. That's what this graph is showing. It's like if you're a tiny account, small or medium. And then here are just sort of anecdotal examples. Someone reporting back from The Guardian is not only did they find an increase in interactions on the platform, they found better conversions off platform. So for The Guardian, like they're thinking about how many people not only interact with a post, but actually click the link and go to their news story. And that they saw a bigger increase in that, even with fewer followers. And then another example I have here is like sort of like a hashtag funding campaign that operated early. This is now 2 years ago in the Fediverse that actually, was able to raise funds on a kind of shorter time scale, which is less than a month. So finally, with those as what I see as opportunities, what are some next steps to update your strategy? Before you start, I have 4 quick ideas. I think it's good to kind of also kind of be mindful or think through like what your readiness is. So I just put this as 3 levels, but you may already have an understanding of how you evaluate your readiness. So the first level is like putting on sneakers. It's like all of what you heard is new to you. You use digital tools, but you don't have a strategy. The next one is more like getting ready at the start line of a race, where it's like you've started to think about digital strategy. You may have processes, you probably still have questions. And then the last one is like you already have your digital marketing strategy. You've updated it. You have in-house expertise. So I think one that is really great for all levels, but probably most valuable for those first 2 levels is to audit your communication tools. I actually think this sort of goes back to an activity that Transverse mentioned too. I share a link to a free template. It is from Hootsuite. It's a free template, but I don't recommend paying for their services as long as they still are keeping their contracts with ICE. But you also don't need that template. There's other ones available online. So the kind of steps you often follow are just review your account, see if your branding is consistent across accounts, review kind of what they give you that template, but other templates give you a way to actually look into your posts and start to understand which ones are doing well versus others, identify similar accounts, and then kind of help from that make an action plan. I also give a link to one that's a little more, especially if you're really just getting started, to understanding the work that Meta is doing on your behalf. And I think that's a really gentle guide, especially if you're a smaller organization. The next one is to, I think, start to think from those 4S behaviors to really sketch out a map of how people are interacting with you. So I would start just with a brainstorm, just to sort of see if you can understand the ways that your product, services, or content actually shows up during those audience behaviors. I think kind of a stretch goal is to then start to move that into understanding customer journeys. This is more for media, if you're kind of medium ready or advanced ready. I think the stretch here is actually asking existing customers how they heard about you and actually engaging in some user research. This is something that I think you may typically do with a consultant or outside help unless you have that internal expertise. Then third, just going back to what I said, so I won't talk too much about this. I do think there's really an opportunity here to experiment with alternative open social media. Just take some time, you can create an account to explore personally before you make the decision to switch over your brand. I share links to 2 quick start guides in both of those networks I talked about. I also think there's a couple cool tools that actually allow you to manage posts and feeds across network. This is something you do not get in big tech social media as easily, or often it's paid. So Fedica is a free service, and then OpenVibe and Surf as well allow you to combine feeds and posts, but there's a cost involved with some level of Surf. And then finally, I think especially as maybe coming in as a content creator or publisher, there are a growing ecosystem of publishing tools that support creators, some that actually allow you to publish from your website directly. So I think that allows some really tight or interesting integrations or cross platform touch points. So I think Flipboard is something you should check out if you haven't already. And some people are using Ghost as well to kind of publish in directly and syndicate content. And then the last one, this is a big hand-wavy topic, which also I think is more advanced and probably more something you do working with a consultant. But I think, it is a moment to be asking questions about your digital resiliency and data sovereignty. So some types of questions that you could ask yourself to get started is do you have even an initial idea of possible exposure to data and privacy risks? I do link to a free tool that's not an endorsement of the service. I think it's from Upper Harbor, but they actually just list all of the SaaS and consumer off-the-shelf services that you may already be using, for example, Slack, and talks through where that data residency is, if there's any ways you want to think about privacy, etc. And then, why are you doing this work? What are those motivations? Is it to mitigate risks? Are you concerned about loss of reputation? Do you want to just buy from other co-ops, practice social procurement. I think all good reasons. And then, you know, maybe start to ask yourself about what your organization's digital dexterity is, like how ready are you? Is there someone who's a champion for that work? Is it you because you're here today? Yeah, so that's kind of the overview. Thank you so much. I think I probably went a little fast because I'm slightly caffeinated. It's early for me. But if you want to talk about any of this, I'll just drop the link in the chat. You can book a time with me just to learn more about Co-Social. If you want to talk about your organization, you want to learn more about open social media, I'm always happy to chat.
Dawn, that was brilliant. What whistle stop tour. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very, very much for everything you've shared with us today. There are already a couple of questions in the chat, which I'm just going to whiz through quickly. But meanwhile, if anyone else does have anything they'd like to ask Dawn or Ellie or Camilla, please do put it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll try and get to as many as possible. But first of all, one thing that seemed to come across for me in both presentations was this idea of the people behind the brand, the people behind the content. So I know at the beginning, Camilla talked about the idea of this fictionalized persona, and I love how this links to the idea of co-op shifting back to the people behind the co-op. And then Dawn, you were talking about human storytelling and this need for this authentic voice. And one thing that is slightly overwhelming for me as a member of a cooperative, as a worker in a cooperative, is just the number of sheer number of social media platforms that are out there. And this is something that Tom asked in the chat, actually saying, you know, we're already on the most common platforms. How do we balance adding new platforms to our workload against managing the expectation to still be present on the old one? Because I think at last count, we're on about 7 different platforms, and each of those platforms has a different audience segmentation and a different need and the need for a different voice. So I just wondered if any of you wanted to come back on that. So maybe Dawn, how do you do that balance?
Like, I just want to be real. I think it's incredibly difficult. And I think especially in the context of like, we're a nonprofit, like we're a small cooperative. We do not have paid staff doing this. And so I think that's where like you really have to be selective and like pick what feel like the most impactful, where you're getting the most engagement, where the people that you like think are your audience or like your members or your consumers are. But I think navigating it is hard. Like it's difficult right now. Yeah, but I would say don't try to do everything. I think pick a couple key places, and I hope if one thing that people could take away is like, you know, understand what those legacy ones are. But I think there is sometimes an opening if you're finding you don't like being on a platform anymore, to leave it and maybe try some of these new ones or just like consolidate.
Real. Camilla, Ellie, Drita, if you want to come back on that.
Yeah, I'll just add in that like if you're doing, you know, a customer profile, it's important to know like what social media apps are the different profiles using, like what are the different customer segments using. And yeah, I think that as co-ops, a lot of times we're small businesses, and even if we're large businesses, we might be competing against monopolies. And so it's not about necessarily like taking up all of the same customer segments as them, but finding more niches and like going after those. And also with social media usage, just like actually testing, like, okay, I put this post out on this platform. I was using this voice. We, you know, had these kind of imagery that we were using. Did that result in engagement? Like, did that result in folks buying, you know, our products? If not, let's try something else, and like doing repeated experimentation with like actually looking at what are you getting out of that, and making your decisions about what platforms to be on, what voice to use, so on and so forth, based on that experimentation.
I like that. It's that idea of not being afraid to try new things. I think that's a really good reminder. It's okay to not do things as well. It's okay to leave things. There's a couple of questions from Eric as well, Eric DeLuca. One I'm going to pick out here, again, probably for you, Dawn, picking up on the idea of social search. It says he's curious about the relative utilization of social search versus AI summary with citations within browser search. Have you got any information on that?
Yeah, I did do a quick response. Like, so definitely,
Oh, bro.
I didn't find any stats, so I can actually kind of like note them relatively. But what I have seen is just an acknowledgement that that's happening. I think there's obviously some real, like, this is where like I think the social harms of AI are coming in too. Just thinking about like the introduction of AI summaries in Google search, like actually destroying like referral traffic to websites and what that does to a lot of people. But that is that is happening. And my understanding is like at least ChatGPT, if not one other AI service provider, is in the top 10 of internet traffic. So people are obviously going there and using chat to do search, and people are relying on the AI summaries because there has been some decline in web traffic referrals from Google pretty steadily. But yeah, I don't know. And I'm also curious like what the relationship between is, how many people are doing that versus social search. But if you look at the most used social platforms, like their traffic is growing. So like people are on those spaces using that social media. So I think it's a significant audience still.
One thing we've found interesting looking at our own analytics is the number of referrals we are getting from AI. So the number of people who are coming to us from references and referrals from ChatGPT is growing hugely, which is I'm not sure what to think about that yet, but it's an interesting one. One final question, Erin. I know you're going to poke me in a moment. There's one question from Alicia Corton saying, "Are you finding that these new platforms have more values-aligned markets, and are you seeing actual business results as a result of using them?"
I think it's early. Like, so I did try to find those concrete examples because that actual business result thing is like incredibly important for me to understand. And so I think people whose business relies on getting traffic to their website, like they are like The Guardian was one example, but I've seen that from other digital publishers. Like they're finding that value. And I think that's why a lot of them have made this switch. I think I've seen or anecdotally heard that from like even like worker co-op communications and like a journalist worker co-op. So I think sometimes it really depends on like what your service or offering is. Like I think if you have a lot of established customers who are like not in that space and you have a lot of like face-to-face, which is how you like do relationships and sales, like yeah, that's probably not gonna do the type of thing you want. But there are some people and some organizations who are definitely finding that. Yeah, but it's still a bit early to have a lot of documented cases, though I've tried to share the examples I can.
Brilliant. Oh, Dawn, Ellie, and Camilla, thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've got so many more questions and I'm going to be emailing you all with them at some point. But meanwhile, Erin, I'm going to hand back to you. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to Rebecca and Don and Camila and Ellie for that. Lots of very technical tips. And that's what we wanted from this. We wanted everything from the theorizing around how we conceive of our brand and how we're out in community and how people connect with us, right down to the nitty-gritty of the how, the day-to-day, what happens when you have a lean staff versus a huge budget for these kinds of things. And I think each session we're unpacking more and more in both of those realms. So I appreciate everyone. I invite all those who are here to go ahead and take a quick survey. Let us know what landed for you and what you'd like to see more of. And I do want to just tease the next session. So we do have 2 more segments coming today. The next one focuses on branding and labeling. We'll have a keynote speech from Jeroen Douglas, who is the Director General for the International Cooperative Alliance, our international global apex, and also to follow with a panel. And then following that, we'll have 3 presentations under the theme of sustainability reporting as part of branding and telling the co-op story. And then more programming tomorrow for the final day of the conference. So I'm hoping that folks can join us for any and all pieces that fit within your schedule. And I appreciate everyone being here. We'll move folks into the waiting room because we will have a half an hour break before our next section. And then we'll invite people back in. So anyone speaking in the next section will arrive 15 minutes early. You'll have a 15-minute break now. Everyone else, see you in half an hour. Thanks all.